The following is an original production of AZPM News.
For AZPM, I'm Mark McLemore, and this is Arizona Spotlight. Coming up, the Tohono O'odham Nation has welcomed an unusual visitor, and they've decided to reward him with a special name. The Arizona theater company's Dracula, a comedy of terrors, finds the laughter between the screams. Learn how the decision to relocate the Arizona State Schools for the Deaf and Blind is being received among the community. And which fictional detective would you trust to solve the case of your own murder? We asked some fans of NPR and PBS to give us a clue. Those stories are next on Arizona Spotlight. There's a relatively recent arrival to the state that's causing quite a stir. This new cat in town is literally that, an ocelot, a wild feline that is native to this hemisphere and looks like a smaller version of a jaguar or leopard. There are less than a handful living in our state, and they keep a very low profile. Next, Tony Paniagua has an interview with two guests who are more familiar with this feline, although neither of them have actually seen him in the fur. They participated in the naming process and used a word from the Tohono O'odham language.
Russ McSpadden from the Center for Biological Diversity and Isaac Valencia from the Tohono O'odham Nation. Thank you very much for joining us.
Gukdash Anyap Jugik Isaac Valencia and Ya Jurap Jugik Selena Mesa and Ya Babab Jugik Jose Valencia. Hi, my name is Isaac Valencia and my mom is Selena Mesa and my dad's Jose Valencia.
Russ, the Center for Biological Diversity and other people in Southern Arizona are very excited about this new resident in our region. Can you tell us how this came about?
An ocelot showed up in June of 2024, just west of Nogales, so likely crossed the border from a breeding population in Mexico, probably about 30 miles south. We think a place like Rancho El Aribabi, this conservation ranch there that has a breeding population. And shortly after, the cat showed up more than 40 miles away, had to cross under I-19 and two highways, and showed up in the Whetstone Mountains on one of my cameras. I was really shocked to even see an ocelot on the camera. We've had about 8 ocelots detected in Arizona since 2009. And while they're native to this region, it's really just extreme southern Arizona and the Sky Island Mountains. And they're really elusive, and it's very rare for anyone to ever see one in real life, let alone on a camera. I was really shocked. But I started looking at the earlier detection, thinking, no way, this is the cat that was seen on the other side of the interstate. But sure enough, I did the spot analysis, and it was just like a human fingerprint. You could tell this is the exact same ocelot, which is really incredible. Since then, the ocelot's been seen again in the Patagonia Mountains on the 4th of July in 2025, and then it was seen in the Santa Rita Mountains on the 11th of July 2025, and this is a huge dispersal for an ocelot. It's not known that for them to travel this widely.
Russell, what should people know about an ocelot? It's hard to confuse them with a mountain lion or something like that. What do you want to say about them?
Yeah, an ocelot's about the size of a bobcat, a bit larger than your standard house cat. They might get up to about 30 pounds. They might be about 3 feet long, not counting the tail, 1.5 feet high. They sort of look like a small jaguar. One thing to know is they're just super elusive. They're pretty shy. It would be very rare for someone to be able to actually spot one. It'd be exceptional. I'd love to see one, but I've only seen them on camera.
And Russ, at some point you contacted the Tohono O'odham Nation about providing a name for this cat.
Yeah, that's right. I've collaborated, and my organization has collaborated with the Tohono O'odham Nation, and I have a good friend, Chairman Nunez, at the San Javier district of the Tohono O'odham Nation, and I just reached out to him and said, hey, do you think of a student group or a class or one of the schools there that might want to learn a little bit more about ocelots and give this cat a name? And he said, yeah, this I know exactly the youth group that would be interested in this, and they're interested in learning the O'odham language and coming up with names in O'odham for this particular cat.
And that's where Isaac comes in. Isaac, tell us a little bit about that. When did you first hear that there was a cat on the Tohono O'odham Nation, and why did you decide to participate in the naming process?
When I first heard about this ocelot, when people started to talk about it a lot. So that's when our chairman Nunez, he reached out to our youth council, told us like to come up with a name for this our ocelot that has been coming around, that's starting to live in our Tohono O'odham Nation. They all asked us like, "Oh, what should we name this ocelot?" And I started to think about it because an ocelot's not really found in our autumn land.
So there are some name options. Why don't you tell us those names and what they meant and then what was ultimately chosen?
So one of the names that were brought up was Aldos, which is like a little dot. The second name was Himadam, which is traveler, little traveler, and Al Hakimer Kokoram, which is little seeker.
And ultimately, one was decided and actually got many votes. Can you tell us about that one, please?
Himadam was the chosen one because it's a traveler. You know, he traveled a long way, and it's like a story about him. That's his story name. So, like, when we come up things like this, we like to write stories about them because they all have a good story to it.
How exciting was it for you and the other students to take part in this process of naming this amazing new resident in our region?
It was really exciting because no one ever expected an ocelot to come across us. And this process was really good.
Russ, there is a breeding population in Texas when we're talking about the contiguous United States, but of course they live in other parts of the American continent, right?
Yeah, ocelots actually have a huge range from northern Argentina to southern Arizona, southern Texas. They used to exist in Louisiana and Arkansas, but they've been extirpated in those states. You know, we have a really small population right now. There are maybe 3 ocelots in Arizona. There could be more. They're very elusive, but we know of 3 that are out there right now. They're really exceptionally beautiful cats, but they're also this indicator of how incredible the Sky Island region is of southern Arizona and northern Mexico. These mountains that sometimes we might take for granted, you know, the Santa Catalinas, you know, Mount Lemmon and the Santa Ritas and the Huachucas and the Patagonias, and all of these mountains are world-recognized biodiversity hotspots. There's no other place in the United States other than Arizona that can claim mountain lions, jaguar, bobcat, and ocelot all in one mountain range that currently exists in places like the Huachucas and the Whetstones and the Patagonias, which is pretty incredible. I hope when people think about this cat, when they think about Himadam, they realize, you know, he could be there right now. And that's just truly incredible.
And what about you, Isaac? What do you think about having the ability to say, hey, he shares my land as well, the land of our people, our ancestors?
It's really good. It is really appreciated when we found out, like, you know, about this ocelot, and we're really thankful.
With ocelots, as well as was all of our wildlife in the Sky Islands, there are a lot of threats and stressors that are, you know, push on these populations. A couple of big ones are just habitat loss in general from development. Another one is connectivity. You know, when new major roadways go in, it can separate one Sky Island from the other and make it really hard for wildlife to move back and forth and to seek mates in one mountain range or another. There's also some really large proposed mining operations in the Patagonia Mountains and the Santa Rita Mountains, and all of these can take habitat from wildlife and cause destruction in those mountain ranges. And then another big one is, of course, the border wall. You know, it's proposed to build at least one wall across the entire state, and there's been proposals to build a secondary wall as well. And so whether or not species like ocelot are able to continue to move between, Arizona and the breeding population in Mexico is yet to be determined. And so those are just some really major risks there.
And Isaac, you get the last question. Are you hopeful that you'll get other ocelots on the Tohono O'odham Nation or perhaps other animals?
Yeah. A lot of people would really love to see an ocelot for the first time.
Isaac Valencia from the Tohono O'odham Nation, San Javier District, and Russ McSpadden from the Center for Biological Diversity. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Isaac Valencia is 14 years old and is known for having a green thumb and enjoying the plants and animals of his ancestral lands. When he was younger, Isaac became a huge fan of Lego bricks, which inspired him to study architecture when he chooses a university. As for the ocelot, you can learn more about him and other wild cats on the Arizona Spotlight page at azpm.org. As any fan of horror stories can tell you, being frightened often comes along with a healthy dose of laughter. Arizona Theater Company's new stage production is Dracula, a Comedy of Terrors, and it definitely invites the audience to embrace the more absurd aspects of this classic story and enjoy the madcap energy behind a cast of 5 actors portraying more than 30 characters. This leads to some very fast costume changes and many performers playing against type. Joining me now is the play's co-creator and the director, Gordon Greenberg, and actors Christopher James Stevens and Paul Vaught to tell us why this is a comedy with some bite. Gordon Greenberg begins.
Steve Rosen and I had written years ago a Christmas show called Ebenezer Scrooge's Big Your Town Here Christmas show that we wrote like a Mad Lib. And it's been playing at the Old Globe in San Diego for about 7 years. And then a theater in Florida asked us if we would be interested in doing the same treatment to Dracula. And we had never read Dracula, so we picked it up and we thought it takes itself so darn seriously that it's really easy to make fun of, which is the key to all great comedy. I always say comedy is in the crisis and in the uber seriousness with which we take absurd circumstances.
Gordon, how long ago did you write this play? How many productions approximately have you been a part of?
Steve and I wrote it in 2019, right before the pandemic, and the first production happened then. And then we were going to go to Chicago Shakes, where we had done a workshop, but the pandemic happened, so we then did a podcast, or what my father likes to call a radio play, which is available on wherever you get your podcasts, and a bit different in terms of text, so that it really takes advantage of the listening experience. We then did it in Canada, in New York, where it played for about 6 months for a season. And then it went to London. And then it was out at the Old Globe. And we've had about 350 productions of it, to be honest, in the last 2 years. It's playing now in Korea, in Germany, in Brazil, in Turkey, in Hungary, in France, all over. There are numerous translations, so it's been enormously popular, and I think it's because it's funny, and I'm proud of that. Steve and I hold ourselves to a very high standard in terms of the wit. Even though some of it is dad jokes, I think underneath it, there's a reservoir of something true and human, and the fact that Dracula is not human means that we look at him as someone that is in some ways familiar today, someone who has everything they want, and the idea that too much of something is just as bad as not enough. So if you're someone with unlimited resources, in his case time, but also money, sex, shopping, food, alcohol, drugs, anything he wants, and none of it will do him any harm. And after a while, it loses its luster. And what he finds by the end of the play is that what he wants is humanity. What he wants is imperfection. What he wants is the beauty of the mundane. We really just wanted to go based on what we found funny about the original text and what we found compelling, which was the fact that Bram Stoker was widely believed to have been of uncertain sexuality and sort of lived a little bit outside of mainstream society in London, and was in fact the manager of the Lyceum Theatre in London, where Lion King is playing, if you've been to Covent Garden recently. And in his travels, he became friendly with Walt Whitman and with Oscar Wilde, and developed epistolary relationships with them. That means letter writing. And they became friendly, and we, based on that, thought there's an opportunity here to explore the pansexual side of Dracula, which became a source of great fun for us.
And Bram Stoker's widow was notoriously litigious and protective of the Dracula property during her lifetime, including trying to have every print of Nosferatu, the silent film by Murnau, destroyed.
I didn't know that, but I'm glad she's dead.
Otherwise, you would have seen her in court.
Exactly.
Okay, Paul, I understand that there is a small cast, but there are a lot of characters. How was this pitched to you in terms of playing not just one singular character?
I knew of the show, and I had been trying to get into a production of the show several times. I always think of myself more as a old school comedian, sketch comedy. I love playing multiple roles in one show and making them fully realized so that maybe you don't know it's the one person playing. I like playing roles that are far from me, which is why I enjoy playing women roles. So I know a lot of people consider it drag, but I just consider it playing a character, and I sort of dive into that aspect of them and who they are like I would any other role. And so I like to find a completely full person to portray comedically. I love this show because I think it's very funny. It's fun to do. It moves quick, which I enjoy doing. So,
Who was the first person in your life that convinced you that you could be funny on stage? Who gave you permission?
me. I think me. I don't know. I have an identical twin brother that I don't want to talk about ever. And when we were young, we got a lot of attention because we were twins. And I just think it's that weird thing. You're funny and you got a little bit more attention. So we just kept going in that route. Our house was the house that everybody in the neighborhood would always come to. And my dad was the grand host of everything. Whenever we had parties at the house, he would get the cotton candy machine and he'd rent the orange soda machine from McDonald's. And we'd have these huge parties, and my dad was the center of attention. And as I got older, I was like, oh, I think that's where I get some of my comedy from. My dad was just a larger-than-life kind of a guy. So I think that's where it came from. And then growing up, I watched Carol Burnett, Jackie Gleason, Flip Wilson, Ernie Kovac. Like, all that type of stuff really informed what I wanted to do and the different styles and what really made sense to me. Because I'm not a bright person. My brain doesn't hold much. So when I do understand something, I go with it.
Chris, when you were starting to create the character of Dracula, I'm sure Gordon and everyone had some input, but was there a portrayal that you particularly had in the back of your mind that helped you to find the cape?
To find the cape. I don't know that there was anything in particular that I was basing Dracula on, other than, I guess, what was like provided in the text. Like, this is somebody who's larger than life. He's in this predicament where he's dated every single person for decades and decades and centuries, really, and he's fed up with it. He can't find, like...
And this is even before social media.
Exactly. So you can imagine how difficult it was. As ridiculous as of a character as Dracula seems, I also think that there's something that I knew that I needed to bring to him that was like grounding, because if it just gets too large and too big, it can kind of escape something that anybody can relate to. So that was kind of where I kind of started. And it was only until I kind of came to the table and came to the rehearsal room with everyone in the cast, I could see what everybody else was bringing. And I have now the foundational groundwork that I want to make him relatable enough. And now I need to like elevate him to exist on like another realm, another plane. So that was kind of like how I built it over time.
Chris, have you had a history of playing romantic leads in your career?
Yeah, a lot of romantic leads don't always have this kind of comedic element baked in as much. I think that's a unique element of this story. Dracula, in some cases, does present as the straight man for the sake of certain jokes and certain moments to land and to hit, because of his like heightened and elevated status above everybody else. I think the audience is going to find themselves laughing at how preposterous Dracula seems to, you know, what we consider normal. Whereas for him, that is his normal, you know.
He doesn't have a lot of self-awareness.
Dracula thinks he's self-aware. It's not that he isn't. I think he's just fooled about, you know, he's been by himself for so long. I mean, during the pandemic, we spent so much time with ourselves. You start to like think in slightly different ways. I mean, for Dracula, he's been isolated from normal social contact, besides inviting people over for his meal, you know.
I think listeners that are listening right now should also know that our Dracula is played here by Chris, and he is 4'10", and he's been an Ewok in Star Wars. And
That's how I got my big break,
his
actually.
face is, it looks like somebody poured tar on his, no.
I wasn't going to ask.
He's very good looking, and he takes his shirt off, and it's delightful, people. Get tickets now!
My guests were director and co-writer Gordon Greenberg and actors Christopher James Stevens and Paul Vaught. Arizona Theater Company's Dracula, a comedy of terrors, is at the Temple of Music and Art through May 16th. Then it heads to Tempe for a second run. There's a link for information on the Spotlight page at azpm.org. In January, Arizona State Schools for the Deaf and Blind Superintendent Annette Reichman announced the closure of the historic Tucson campus. Parents, students, and staff have questioned whether the decision was made in haste, even as they brace for relocation this summer. The following report is a collaboration between AZPM reporters Noor Hagigi and Thatcher Warwick Hess. Some of the participants' voices are provided by interpreters as part of the video relay system.
We have very deep roots in the community, very deep roots in the community. It is home for many of us, for deaf and blind children who have been through the programs.
Lisa Furr is a 1984 alum of the Arizona State Schools for the Deaf and Blind. She's one of many who are hoping to stop the relocation of a historic Tucson campus to Oro Valley. But after more than 100 years on West Speedway Boulevard, ASDB is on its way north, and community members are reeling with the effects. A combination of budget shortfalls, low enrollment of about 114 students, and deteriorating buildings on the 56-acre campus is making it difficult for the school to stay afloat. Here's District Superintendent Annette Reichman.
While the ASDB facilities team has done its best to keep both campuses safe and comfortable for staff and students, this is becoming less achievable, particularly on the Tucson campus.
It's an issue facing several school districts in Pima County. Continuously falling enrollment, brought on somewhat by the declining birth rate, is sinking the schools that depend on per-pupil funding from the state. A board vote on February 5th advanced ASDB's lease agreement with the Amphitheater School District that would move students to Copper Creek Elementary School, which AMPHI voted to close. It's about 15 miles away from ASDB's current campus, and according to AMPHI, has the capacity to hold more than 800 students.
ASDB parents have been left with a lot of unanswered questions in this process, which has unfolded in less than a month's time after families were notified of a potential relocation. Liza Smith is a mother of 3 children who are deaf. Smith says that her kids don't really understand what's going on.
The big concern for them is, are they going to make friends there? Are there going to be teachers going? I know a lot of staff, they're in the process of laying staff off, so I'm not sure if my kids are going to see the same teachers that they recognize.
Furr said that the isolation will be the biggest hurdle for the children.
They need role models that are also deaf and blind so that they don't grow up isolated. And if ASDB is closed, then they will struggle and be hurt even further.
During a January community meeting, parents submitted questions, but many ended up frustrated and speaking out of turn. 60 to 70 staff are expected to be laid off next year. One staff member at ASDB who wished to remain anonymous wrote to AZPM, stating, "On top of it all, my job is now on the line. I've yet to get answers to the most burning questions. Reichman is being very vague, and her total transparency is numb."
The outpouring of confusion was somewhat addressed in following meetings, but soon enough, new concerns arose. The proposal Reichman presented would separate blind and visually impaired students from their deaf peers. A group of ASDB families even filed a lawsuit against Reichman and the district, alleging the unlawful dismantling of programs for blind and visually impaired students.
The parents who filed the suit also accused the district of failing to provide timely and accessible notice of action. Donald Porterfield, who is the president of the National Federation of the Blind's Board of Directors, sent a letter to ASDB in January. The letter starts, "Our concerns are not about the decision to reorganize campuses or programs, but about the process, communication, and equity of planning for blind students as these changes move forward." When it came time for the board to vote, ASDB officials were met with resistance from families at a meeting in Phoenix.
One parent, Randall Kidd, called for more honesty from school officials.
However, if you make decisions on your own, how then do you expect the community to stand up and support you when you say that you're going to be transparent, yet the community has no communication or access? Please be transparent, communicate, and work with us. Thank you.
Donna Lambert is a social worker for ASDB and has been employed there for 25 years. She said financial issues are an agency responsibility, not something to burden students with.
For many students, it is the first place they have felt safe, understood, and able to truly learn. Many arrived after experiencing bullying, isolation, academic failure, and lack of access vision-specific instruction in public schools. On this campus, they are not surviving, they are thriving. They are building independence, confidence, and essential skills.
A week after the board meeting in early February, an ASDB board member from Tucson handed in his resignation. On February 16th, ASDB sent out a letter to parents confirming that visually impaired students would not be moving to Copper Creek alongside their deaf peers.
Each child deserves a good quality education that is fully accessible with equal access that allows them to participate fully in sports and academic and the social life of education with students that are like themselves.
The campus is set to relocate to Oro Valley this summer. The governing board has voted to cap incoming teachers' salaries below $66,000 a year. That report was filed by AZPM's Thatcher Warwick-Hess and Noor Hagigi. There's more to the story that can be found on our webpage, azpm.org. What fictional detective do you trust the most when it comes to solving the most difficult cases? That was the question that Sarah Ariano asked several of the folks who attended the recent AZPM screening of the new BBC mystery series Bookish. Here's a sampling of who people would want to take the case if disaster struck and their own murder needed to be investigated.
My name is Natalia Fredlake. I would trust Mary Russell. She's Sherlock Holmes' young female apprentice, and she's very clever, very sharp, and very witty.
My name is Judy Calloway.
Judy, who is a fictional detective that you would trust to solve your own murder case?
Poirot, because he's very methodic, and he also looks and views things that other people may not see.
Robert Bulacek. Oh, absolutely Sherlock Holmes. Because he's so smart and he figures stuff out based on very little evidence.
Ellen V.I. Warshawski, because she's Polish and she's from the south side of Chicago, like I am. And she is tough as nails, and she always does everything to save her client. I think she's crazy most of the time for all the stuff that she does. She does things that I would never dream of doing, going after people on her own when she shouldn't.
My name is Shirley, Inspector Gamache, because I've read all of those books, and I just know how good he is. His personality and the way he deals with people because of the way he deals with his family. And, he's just a good detective.
Celeste Peters. Oh, I've read all of Becky Masterman's books on her, and I just love the character. Bridget Quinn, and she's closer to my age, has a lot of world experience, and she's, pardon the badass.
That's the best word to describe a detective.
My name is Darrell White.
Who is a fictional detective that you would trust to solve your own murder case?
Scooby-Doo's Mystery Inc. Because every episode they always find the bad guy.
David Calloway.
David, who is a fictional detective that you would trust to solve your own murder case?
Vera. She's got sass and she's very intuitive.
Carol. Sherlock Holmes. Because he's my fave. Just the way he thinks and goes about business.
Brian Carter.
Brian, who is a fictional detective that you would trust to solve your own murder case if necessary?
Hercule Poirot.
Because he is very exact. He's very perceptive in every detail.
Kathleen. Kathleen, who is a fictional detective that you would trust to solve your own murder case?
Miss Marple, because she always solves them in the end. She lives in a small English village and she just observes everything and she puts two and two together.
Those were just some of the visitors to the AZPM screening of the debut episode of the BBC detective series Bookish, as interviewed by Sarah Ariano. Thank you for listening to Arizona Spotlight. This show is a production of AZPM and is posted weekly at azpm.org. The production engineer is Jim Blackwood. Production assistance by Sarah Ariano. I'm producer and host Mark McLemore.
This has been an original production of AZPM News.